Welcome back. When we relaunched this show, I told you we would take our curiosity outside of the nation's capital frequently, and we're doing so right now. There's an effort underway in Detroit to solve cold cases by exhuming unidentified human remains. As our Jim Axelrod reports, it's a joint operation between the FBI and the Detroit Police Department, led by two women, FBI Special Agent Leslie Larson and Detroit Police Sergeant Shannon Jones.
Sergeant Jones thought clues were buried
all the way down
here
to all the way down that way.
There are bodies buried?
Yes.
She knew Detroit had historically buried unidentified crime victims in cemeteries across the city.
There was a total of about 200 cases.
200.
That we had documented. That went back to 1959.
She proposed digging up all the bodies they could find to test their DNA.
This isn't just about police work. This is about restoring someone's humanity.
Yes. My whole goal was always giving them their name back and helping some families with some answers.
But that kind of large-scale exhumation required technology and manpower Jones didn't have.
My first thought was, I'm all in, let's get it organized and let's go dig.
So she turned to FBI Special Agent Leslie Larson.
Why not use the resources that we have in our criminal laboratories, which are phenomenal, to take science and apply it to old cases?
Apply science to old cases. We're going to talk about that. I'm joined now by Katherine Schweit. She is author of Women Who Talk to the Dead, a new book about these cold cases in Detroit. She is also a former FBI special agent. Katie, it's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Walk my audience through this whole process. What you discovered, what has been discovered, and what previously cold, unsolved cases have turned into.
Yeah, I'm really honored to tell the story because it's an ongoing story, but it's an incredible story. And I say that as a person who was in the FBI for 20 years.
You know from incredible, in other words.
That's what I'm saying. The Detroit Police Department looked back at all these years of cold case murders, and they began to match some cold case murders with some missing people. And bit by bit, Shannon Jones began to see sometimes these overlapped. But the more that she worked on it, the more she realized, I have to have more information. I have to have more information about the people who are underground. So she set off on this odyssey to convince the FBI to help her do this.
Some in my audience might say, Katie, wait a minute, unmarked graves? What are you talking about? How does that even happen?
You know, I think it's an unknown. For most people, they don't realize that we live in a world where we have always, priority is to get a dead body into the ground because of infection that might be spread, disease, and things like that. So even when somebody is unidentified, they're buried. And around the United States, there are thousands and thousands of graves of people who are buried without a name, without a gravestone. And they're just there forever, unless somebody like these tenacious law enforcement officers decides we're going to change the rules.
In police work, and I covered police work for 6 years before I got to Washington, D.C., detectives will talk about and this might be a cliche, but kind of a light bulb moment. And the light bulb moment here is, wait a minute, we have DNA, we have forensic tools that we didn't have 30 or 40 years ago. Let's find out what we can do with those tools for these particular cases.
And I think it is absolutely the DNA, but it's also other factors. I think Shannon Jones decided, and Leslie Larson joined her, to say, let's go back and reopen every one of these cases that was sitting in a paper file. No electronic data at all in Detroit. Let's go back and open up a paper file and see what might have investigators been able to find out if they had more information, including DNA, which would identify them, but also what might have been missed in the files, because these cases date back to the 1950s, the 70s, when Detroit was known as the murder capital of the world. Law enforcement was working on the low-hanging fruit, not the toughest cases. And so they're closing tougher cases now. But in addition to that, and probably the most important thing, I think, especially for Shannon, you see the humanity with Shannon and Leslie, that their most important factor for them was to reunite families that had been lost, mothers who thought their children disappeared or ran away.
This is a upside story for you, meaning justice served, names being recovered, families getting some closure. There's a harder story to talk about from this weekend in Minneapolis, and what has been characterized, I think quite accurately, as a political assassination with lots of premeditation. Offer my audience what your thoughts are about that.
I think Minnesota, I work mostly on mass shootings, mass killings in my rest of my life. And what I saw in Minnesota was a frightening escalation of where we have come culturally in this country. I think a different and very hard turn that is going to show that politically we're agreeing to allow people to have personal vendettas served. And I think that's going to continue on, and that frightens me.
Personal vendettas that took a very violent turn in the Twin Cities. Katie Schweit, thank you so much for being with us. I really appreciate it.